So my name is Jeff Summers, and I'm with Walmart Canada. Let me just start off a little bit. I'll be talking about how to prepare for the interview, different types of interviews, what recruiters and hiring managers will look for. I'm not going to discuss disclosure because we already discussed it this morning. So basically preparing for an interview and interview process. First of all, let me start off with what Walmart Canada is. If you haven't heard of Walmart, some of you may not have, I'm sure. But we started in 1994 here in Canada, and when we took over and bought out Woolco and Woolworth, and as of right now, we have 309 stores. The 6 Sam's Clubs, actually, this week we decided to close those stores. They're all in Ontario. And so we're going to close all the Sam's Clubs and add some more super centers. So we will have about 316 stores by the end of this year and about 83 super centers and some more coming to Calgary. So that gives you an idea of what is going on with Walmart. And of course at Walmart Canada we believe in diversity, creating a culture of inclusion for everybody. We're all one family within the store. Each associate is special. They have each unique qualities that we look for. And we look for differences in each other because that's everybody the same within the store won't be a good environment. And it's from Sam Walton, the founder of Walmart, who his basic belief was respect for the individual. First of all, preparing for the interview. First of all, you should research the company before you go in for the interview. Succeeding in an interview depends on many factors such as your previous work experience, your education, and your attitudes that you have. One of the most common mistakes that people have, though, in coming to an interview is they're not prepared, and they don't know about the prospective employer that they're dealing with. Preparation is essential for success in your interview. Having knowledge about your employer can enable you to be more prepared for the questions that you're going to get and to have you ask more prepared questions to the employer. And it also makes you feel more at ease when you're in the interview process, knowing about the employer more. In order to do this, you should research the company. Let me see. Let's start there. Some of the questions you should look for is what the company does and how is it run, the financial state of the company, and also who are the major competitors of that company. The more information you find out, like I said, the more comfortable you will be about the interview process, and when you have questions asked of you, you will be more knowledgeable to answer those questions. This is kind of a silly example, but if you go for an interview at McDonald's and you say something like, I enjoy being a vegetarian and I'm president of the Calgary Do Not Eat Meat Club, that's probably not a good idea because you didn't research McDonald's, and McDonald's sells a lot of hamburgers. So that's just a funny kind of example, but you really should take it seriously and study your company before you go in there and get an idea exactly what's going on with that company. Some of the resources you can use are, of course, the company websites. Most large companies and small companies have websites they can read about. Google the information, put that company in there. All the news will pop up as far as what's going on with the company as well. Friends, acquaintances, even if you walk into that company and there's a store or something and talk to somebody, just get an idea of what's going on with the company. And you should also research the position itself, not just the company. There's all different types of positions within the company, so you should know which one you're going to go interview for and what the job duties are and expectations are of you for that position. Because most of the questions you'll be receiving will be based specifically on the experience and qualifications for that position that you're applying for. If you're going just generally just going in for an interview and you don't know exactly what qualifications are, you're going to look pretty silly in an interview. And you don't want to do that. You want to be confident in what you're doing and look professional and sound professional about what you're applying for. For the interview, your salary expectations as well. Sometimes you may want to know what the salary is. Some of you don't care what you get paid, but other people really want to know going in what kind of salary expectations they may receive from the company or for that position. So if you can find that out, sometimes companies are real tight with that information, but do your research and see if you can find out what the range is for the salary for that position so you're informed before making any decisions about that position. Next, we should also rehearse and practice your interviews techniques. After your research of the company, you'll probably have a good idea of what the expectations are of that position as well. You should write down questions that you think you'll be received from the interviewer. Questions like, why do you think we should hire you? That's pretty general. Tell me about your experience as it relates to this position. And another basic one is, what are your strengths and weaknesses? Those are just some, if you don't have any ideas, some basic ones that you know will, some form or another will be asked of you. So you want to practice getting those type of questions and answering them. Also, know your resume. It sounds funny, but I get a lot of people that come in for interviews after I've seen the resumes, and I started asking them questions about the resume, and they seem surprised. They go, oh, was that on there? And so I know it sounds funny, but it happens all the time. So you really should know what is on your resume and make sure that information is accurate, because you don't want to also say stuff like, oh, I should have added that on there. Oh, I meant to take that off. It should be all taken care of before you go in for an interview, because that really hurts you in an interview. I mean, you want everything to go right. And if that stuff starts happening, it seems like everything else starts falling apart, and an interview doesn't go so well after that. So really be prepared for that kind of stuff. Just a small thing is going to make a difference when you're competing against other people for the same position. And when doing this, use your friends and families to help you with this process. Do mock interviews. Sit down with somebody. Have them ask you the questions. Answer the questions back to them so you get more comfortable. The more practice and the more comfortable you are with this, when you go in there, you're going to feel a lot more confident. And your confidence is really going to show in the way you act and the way you sound. And even if you don't have the experience, sometimes if you show the confidence, that's going to get you past that. So it makes a difference. Those that have the experience and don't seem so confident with it may not get the job, even though they have the experience. So that's to say, more information to use. Let's see. Also, before you go in there, be prepared to have your questions ready. More than likely, you will be asked, do you have any questions about the company or about the position? And you don't want to be in a position where you say, no. That shows disinterest, that you really don't care about the job so much, or that you know everything. And so have some kind of questions ready. Some of the basic questions you could ask is, what's a typical day like in this position, knowing that there is no such thing as a typical day? Another question you could ask are, what are the most important qualities to be successful in this job? Those are some basic questions you might want to ask if you don't have any other questions. But definitely ask some questions so it shows that you have an interest in the job. Don't ask any offensive questions, please. Some people actually go in there and ask, why is this office so dirty, or why does it look so unorganized? And be nice with your questions. Just some information you need to know or want to know, but nice questions, okay? Because it's all about getting the job, right? Next, we'll talk about our references on your resume. Make sure they're accurate. When you come in, have your references available. You don't have to have your references on your resume. That's not necessary. Most people will ask for your references later on if they're serious about hiring you. But make sure that phone numbers are correct on your references when you give them. And when you come in for your interview, make sure you have a hard copy of your resume with you. A lot of times companies nowadays, everything's online, and so we'll be viewing your resumes online, and if we print a hard copy off, it's not going to be look exactly the same as one that you have, a nice prepared one. So bring in a nice hard copy so they can actually look at it and see a nice resume that you have, and not just a computer screen of jumbled information about you guys. It makes a big difference as well. As far as your resume as well, I know you've had a chance to practice writing your resumes. Nowadays, most of the resumes go through a software, a scanning software, if you submit it to large companies. And so the resume you write won't be exactly what is shown to a lot of companies when they look at it. The software go through and scan out keywords. It could be sales, it could be budget, it could be customer service, and it picks out those words. And then we'll bring up those resumes that have those keywords, and then we'll look at the basic information of the applicant on that resume. So when you're writing your resume, think about the keywords you want for that position. If it's in oil, engineering, pipe fitting, whatever, just make sure you put keywords that you think the employer will be looking for when they're looking for someone with the qualifications for that job, because it's going to be a lot of computer software bringing up those keywords. Because you get hundreds of resumes in, you want yours to stand out the most. And it's not going to be the color of the resume that's going to do it. It's going to be the keywords and what you put into the resume. So have your friends and family look at your resume as well. Spelling, grammar, basic stuff, but it happens all the time. I see people can't even spell the word of the position that they're applying for, and it's not going to get the job. Not even going to get an interview that way. So be careful about your grammar as well, please. And make try to, if you can, I know some people apply to a lot of positions at one time, just throw the resumes around. If you can, if there's one position you really like, try to make your resume specific for that job or that company. The more specific you are for that one position, the more likely you will be brought up and come in for an interview for that position. This looks a lot better and that you really want that job. Also, basic wardrobe, dress appropriately, dress comfortably, make sure you feel confident in your clothes as well. It's better to be overdressed than underdressed for a position, no matter what the position is. So if you're always worried about, is this enough, do what you think feels right, but a little more is better than less when you meet somebody. It means you really take effort to look good and that they're confident about themselves as well. Plan to be on time for interviews. Things go wrong. Getting there is going to, traffic, wrong address, things always go wrong. So I'd plan for 20 minutes early. If you get there 20 minutes early, like everything worked out perfectly, it's beautiful, you finally made it 20 minutes early. Don't go in there. Don't go in there and say, I'm ready. You're 20 minutes early. Wait around a little bit before you go in and announce yourself. Because if you're too early, once again, this might seem like you're too anxious. These are just little things, I'm telling you. But when you're dealing with a lot of people and you want the little things to stand out. So, you don't want to get there real early and sit there for half hour and have people inside looking at you and saying, okay, they're here for an interview at 2 o'clock and it's 1:30 and what do we do with you? and you're sitting there all nervous. So, if you get there early, just wait outside or just wait around before you go inside and announce yourself. And then, 10 minutes early, go in there, fine, have a seat and get ready for an interview. Okay? Try to be at least 5 minutes early before you go into the office, though, right? After that, you look like you're, trying to cut it right on the nose, and it might not work out. Also, try to get the name or names of the people you'll be dealing with. Makes a difference. If you go in there and you see the person and you say, hi, Joan, I'm, so-and-so, I'm glad finally to meet you and have an interview with you, just that personal contact right away. Once again, you're making a connection with the employer right away. So that's going to affect how the interview is going to go and how they're going to remember you. Just not another person, because you actually started a connection right away. Now I'm going to talk about a little bit of the types of interviews you could experience when you go into the interview process. The first is the exploratory, which is also known as informational. Melody from Mount Royal talked about this earlier this morning. This is more of the interview that you set up when there's not an interview, a job open. This is one that you call up the company and decide that you want to find out more about the position or the company. And so you're the one that's arranging this. You're the one that's having the questions. These are your questions. This is your interview. These interviews are ideally meant to help you find a position even though there's nothing currently available, or gather information about that company and the position. It also helps in networking, start the networking process, start meeting people within the organization, and get an idea of what you need to do to get in there. To set up one of these interviews, you just find out the kind of position you want, make a phone call, ask that you want to set up a informational interview, just find out information about the company. Let them know that you're not currently, want to interview for a job. You just want to find out about the jobs and the company itself. That way there's no pressure on the person that you're going to be talking to, thinking that, they're going to think they're going to get a job, right? Just let them know, no, just want to talk to you informally and ask questions about the positions you have and your company. That sets a person more at ease and more likely to get an interview with the person. And also be mindful that they're taking the time out to talk with you. So once again, you're questioning, be nice about your questions. Just do it for informational purposes and for your networking purposes for later on. The main reason for the exploratory interviews, of course, are to gain insight into what you want to do at the company, or if you really want to work for this company, and to expand your network in this area that you want to get a job in. It does something else as well. It gives you confidence. If you go in there learning about a company and asking and conducting your own interview, is giving yourself confidence, because you're now the interviewer, so you now knows what it feels like, and you get comfortable with talking back and forth, asking questions, receiving questions, and the position, asking questions about the position. So it helps you in gaining your confidence for getting a job later on as well. Of course, when you're finished with the interview, thank them nicely for their time and exchange information, and then you have someone to talk to later on down the line, even if it's not with the company, just someone else to help them get into that type of position somewhere else. It's great to have great networks all over, so it's not going to be a waste of your time. Another type of popular interview right now is the behavioral interviews. The most accurate predictor of the future performance of an individual is their past performance in a similar situation. So based on these type of interviews, the interviewer is trying to see how you act in the past, so they know how you're going to act in the future with their company. So they'll ask you behavioral type questions to get responses from you of things that you've done at your work in other positions or at school to know how you're going to act when you're working with their company. Some interview questions could be like, tell me about yourself as well. This type of question leaves it open to you to open up and tell about yourself. Things come out that structured questioning won't bring out. Leaves it wide open for a lot of areas for you to jump into. May ask you about leadership, example for leadership, and you can talk about your leadership experiences. Just listen carefully to the interview question, and then if you need clarification, ask for clarification, because it's better to get the interview question right than answering it wrong. So know what you're answering before you answer it. As well, when you answer these questions, there's a process we call STAR, which will help you answer these questions. I'll talk about that a little bit later. Another type of interview process is scenario-based interviewing. This is when they throw you in a question based on something that could happen to you at the company. Let's see if I have a scenario-based question. Example question would be like, what would you do if you were given multiple tasks and you feel you don't have enough time or support to get those tasks done? Everyone's going to have a different answer, but you're thrown into a scenario that may happen. And so, you're going to know how you're going to act in those type of positions. And that can be done for a lot of different scenarios. It can be based on what kind of job you're going in for or what type of company. They can ask you different scenarios, and you have to throw yourself into that scenario and answer how you think you would act in that position. If you know about the company and the position, you can probably guess what type of questions they'll ask you. It's based on your qualifications and experiences that they're looking for that position. Another type of interview is the panel interview. This scares some people. So when you go into a room and there's like 3 people sitting like here, and you're sitting right there in a chair. And so these are more structured, it can be more structured, but you could have like a hiring manager, human resources, or a coworker all in the same room with you, but they all have a different point of view. So they're trying to get everybody in the company a different point of view to see how you would react and see how they perceive you. Like coworker, like the hiring manager may love your experiences, and the coworker over there asks you questions, and they may not like to work with you. So this is a wide range of, not every company does it. Sometimes they do it, but you can expect that sometimes. Don't get nervous about those. A lot of times they turn out to be informal because there are so many people and then things happen and people start laughing. But I don't know, that's my experience with panel interviews, but not that strict. I'm not like school where you're going for a test or anything. So, but you can expect those type of interviews as well. Another type is a group interview. Those aren't very common. I've seen them done in warehouses and such. It's when you go in with a bunch of people, like all of you together, applying for a job. And I stand up here, tell you about the job and the company, and then I could ask questions and you guys raise hands, start answering questions, or I go by and ask you questions and individually answer questions. Is this a group process? We're all doing it together. And that's basically for lower level type positions where you're hiring a bunch of people at once, where you may hire half the group, or even 10 out of 30, but just to get the process done more efficiently instead of going individually. So that happens once in a while. Other types, most types of interview questions are either unstructured or structured. Unstructured questions leave it open-ended more for you to answer. And there's the person will come in there with a piece of paper with maybe 10 questions on here, and they ask everybody the same question. You'll answer the same questions. The next person comes in for an interview will answer the same questions, so on. So they get an idea of how you react to being asked the same questions. It's not behavioral. It's just easy to do, straightforward, answer the questions. The other type is the unstructured interview, where the interviewer maybe ask you questions, and based on your responses, they will ask you more questions. They could ask you, tell me about the last job you had, what did you like about it? And based on your responses, they'll ask you more questions. This is to get more in-depth knowledge about you, so they're not limited to certain questions. It's more geared to getting as much information out of you as possible. So that may be, the beginning interviews are probably more structured, and then as you go along, it gets unstructured to find out more information about you, more in-depth information. So the more you talk, the more we get you to talk, the more information we're going to know about you. So that's the whole idea. If they want to, and that's good for you though. The more they ask you those kind of questions, and the more you start talking, that means the more they're interested in you. If you get the basic Structured questions, and that's it. Things aren't going that great. It's okay, you may come back, may not. So you get an idea of what's going on. The whole idea is to get a connection with the interviewer and with the people there, and so they see that you have an interest in the position and that you'd be a good candidate. So I talked about a little earlier, answering questions. You can remember the STAR process for answering questions. STAR is like acronym. Situation, task, action, result. Let me see if I have an example here. Like I'll ask you, tell me about a workplace problem that you solved. So that's my question. Tell me about a workplace problem that you solved in the past. So you think, how would I answer that? Maybe STAR. So you tell them the situation that you had, a situation or task that you had. It could have been one of my customers was unhappy with the product. That's the situation. One of my customers was unhappy with the product. And then you want to give action. Tell them the action that happened. So what did you do? The action. You could have, I gave them the money back. I looked at the product and noticed that it was defective and gave them the money back. Or explained to them our policy that we couldn't return it. That was your action. And then you want to tell them the result. What happened? Well, based on that customer was very happy with my service and my action, so they went and told their whole family, and they came back and everybody bought something. So that's the kind of process we're looking for, and most interviewers are looking for when you go into an interview. You want to give them the whole scenario when they ask you a question. And so this can work for almost every question that you get. Just situation or task, action, and result. If you have results with numbers, that's even great. That's better, right? Yeah, my result resulted in 50% increase in sales. Those numbers seem to make people excited, right? Oh, wow, 50%, great. But this will help you so you don't get nervous with interviews that, okay, situation, task, what's the situation, what action I take, and what's the result. So you don't get flustered in interviews, and so you know what exactly they're going to be looking for, okay? So basically, just remember important things. Be confident, be prepared, and remember that everybody has something special to offer each company, each strength. You have your own strengths and qualities, and it's important that you present those and make those show in your interview, because that's what gets you the job, okay? Thank you very much.